Your hormones, if you are a woman, are a superpower. They are a superpower that you can tap into. Kind of amazing, right? And if you watch the whole video, I'm going to give you some clues, some cues about how you, as the expert in your body, your energy, and your emotions can make that happen. Okay, have you ever watched one of the all-star male productivity experts? I have. And have you ever heard Ali or Sean or Brendan or Gary mention a woman's hormonal health? Tell me if you have. I never have. The guys who are big in productivity, and I love them all, and they have great ideas, act like men and women are the same. Well, yes and no. Both men and women have estrogen and testosterone, but how those work in our body and what happens to our bodies, our spirit, our emotions, that's different for men and for women. And I'm going to dive into that today. It's a new topic, and I really hope you will comment, because what I have now are prompts to help you think about this in a productive way for yourself, and I want to hear what you think. And if you want to slam me, that's okay too, because I will learn from that. Okay, here's the deal for you. If you focus on your hormonal health, you will be more productive in every aspect of your life. You don't believe me, right? Well, think about this. Elite women athletes in every sport who are playing for their countries, particularly at the Olympic level, have coaches helping them manage their hormonal health. They have teams of people helping them. They have people helping them with nutrition. They have people helping them tailor their fitness routines. They have people helping them with self-care. They have people helping them with learning how to recover. And it's all tailored to a woman's body, because everyone is learning that in sports, a woman can perform better if hormonal health is good. Now, here's something that hit me. Maybe you've heard it. Maybe it's a statement that resonates with you. I was sitting around the other night and I thought, elite athletes have periods. Elite athletes have periods. In my whole life, whenever anyone has talked about athletes and top performance, I have never heard anyone say, elite athletes have periods. But elite athletes do have periods. And so we're going to stop now and talk about the hormonal cycles that women go through. If you are young, I bet you are up to speed on cycle syncing. There are apps now, lots of apps that you can buy to help you track your entire monthly cycle. They are added to Fitbit. They are added to Apple Watch. You can buy them separately. At first, these apps were important to help you if you want to get pregnant. I mean, the initial idea for tracking one's hormonal health was, how do I get a better guess of when I'm ovulating, so that if it's time to make a baby, I know exactly what the window is and I can do something about it with someone, right, to help me fertilize an egg. Now, the cycle syncing idea has expanded a little further. There's a book that came out about cycle syncing and eating and nutrition that has done extremely well, that has some great ideas in it, and that has enraged endocrinologists and gynecologists. I don't know, I don't still have a period. If it works for you, I'm also interested in hearing your experience with cycle syncing as a concept and with apps. Today, I'm going to use just variations in hormones at a very high level and then we can talk about hormones and productivity right now and see what you think. As an introduction, both men and women produce estrogen and testosterone. We both have the same hormones, even though they're thought of as female and male hormones. What's different is how they work and how they affect our brains. So our brains and what they tell our bodies to do are being washed in different hormones. Our brains are being exposed to different hormones at different times. Now we can say, as we have said for a long time, the fact that our hormones affect our brain differently means that we are less than. We are not less than. We are normal. Women are normal. We just haven't been studied as much, and we haven't had permission to study ourselves as much to get the most out of how our brains affect our bodies and how we work, our bodies and our emotions. When I talk about a woman's cycle, I'm not talking about a woman's period. I'm talking about the entire cycle. I'm going to give you the 4 phases of that cycle, which you can find everywhere, and you probably have learned about them. And I'm going to give you some rough estimates about how long each phase of the cycle lasts, knowing that your cycle is going to be completely different. Lots of you have irregular cycles. You may have PCOS. You may be on birth control. You may naturally experience different times of your cycle differently. That's cool. I'm just going to give you averages so we can work with the concepts. The 4 phases of a woman's cycle are the menstrual cycle, which is roughly days 1 through 5. So we're going to start with that. And you know that because you know what happens when you're having your period. You know, the menstrual cycle is the easiest. And let's take that as the first stage of the hormonal cycle. The second stage is the follicular stage. They say on average that's days 6 through 10 of your cycle. May not be true for you, but that's a rough average of out of a month. When that cycle falls, it's right after you menstruate. The follicular cycle kicks into gears, and that's roughly days 6 through 10. Then we hit the ovulatory phase. That comes after the follicular. Obviously, our bodies are busy in the egg-making world, and that is roughly days 11 through 18. Now, you know for yourself if you're tracking if that's true or not, and even if you're tracking, you may not experience it exactly that way, exactly every month. So again, this is just a general guideline. And the 4th phase is the luteal phase, is days 19 through 28, roughly. So those are the 4 phases: menstrual, follicular, ovulatory, luteal. So now we're going to talk a little bit about hormones and what happens over that cycle. I have been way deep into the research. I have been on a couple of AI platforms. I've been reaching out to a wide network. I have a lot of resources I can give you. And what I found is that it's helpful to work from my own experience. I'm a woman. I had a cycle. I had a menstrual cycle. I went through menopause. I actually was on testosterone for a while. So as these hormones ebbed and flowed in my body, I had my own experience of what it was like. Now, back in the day, what we were supposed to do was hide the fact that we had cycles, because men in relationships and in the corporate world were really nasty about it. Sometimes, not all men. I'm not man-hating, far from that. I'm just sharing with you things that we've all heard. Like if I made a comment in a meeting that was considered to be negative, it was okay at that time for a man to say in a meeting, "Oh, she must be," I'm sorry to say this, on her rag, on the rag. Men would talk openly about, "Oh, you got PMS? Are you on the rag?" They used the fact that I had a menstrual cycle and fluctuating hormones as a club to beat me with. What happened when I got interested in looking about the effects of a hormonal cycle on productivity, not just for corporate women, but for entrepreneurs, because I am an entrepreneur. I've done startups. I've been involved in startups. When I talk to my friends about speaking openly about hormonal cycles and productivity, there were some of them who begged me not to do it. And they told me not to do it because they said, Ronna, if you talk about hormonal cycles, it will be weaponized. It will be used as a weapon. Because if you talked about hormonal cycles and talked about periods, some men, some women, not everybody, some people looking at how employees perform are going to go immediately to, oh, she's talking about people who are menstruating, who need to be home with painkillers and heating pads and lost days at work. And it's horrible that women have these cycles. It goes immediately to the negative. And in fact, when I was trying to work with two AI programs to get to the positives of different levels of the hormonal cycle, I kept having to iterate the question, because you know that ChatGPT-4 and Claude both work on existing information. And so when they went through the phases of a woman's hormonal cycle, they automatically, in the menstrual phase, in the time of the month where the lining of your uterus is being released in preparation for the next round, right? It automatically went to negatives. It took me 6 tries to get to the positives about that phase for a woman's productivity. I was astonished by that. I had to keep asking the question and asking the question, because these large language models could not find easily information about why that one phase of a woman's hormonal cycle is a good thing. Kind of proves the point, right? So I remember when I still had a cycle and I had my period, sometimes when I was in the menstrual phase of my cycle, I would have what I now call brain fog, where my brain just wasn't sharp and analytical. And that was a time that was really organized for men, and you were supposed to be on it, and there was not even a notion of recharge. And the days that I had brain fog really pissed me off, because it was like having some unruly creature in my head that I couldn't turn into this thinking machine that the world wanted me to have. I've also had the experience of brain fog with various things that happen, diseases that are more common in women. And I've talked to women who have, like fibromyalgia or chronic illnesses where they get brain fog, or women who are pregnant talk about, brain fog when they're pregnant. Women who've just had a baby talk about brain fog right after they've had a baby. There are just times when your brain is not analytical. And I think that's great. That is fine. That is beautiful. We should celebrate that, because the hormones are saying, guess what? Something else is a priority right now. And what's a priority for you is all the things you can learn about self-care so that you can regenerate, you can refresh, you can recharge, and be ready for what's coming. You're not going to live in that brain fog forever. I used to beat myself up because I felt that I was smarter at different times of the month. That may be true, but I wasn't wiser, right? I didn't have access to the wisdom, the deep well of wisdom and nourishment that we all need to cope with the world. And so hating myself for not being able to focus also contributed to self-loathing, to the emotional cycles we've talked about. Some people say, young people are saying that it contributes to the times when they most dislike their appearance. They'll have a spike in body dysmorphia when they have their period, because they think, oh, I'm having my period and I'm not really on my game and maybe I have more pimples. So we've cast this time as bad and unproductive, when in fact it's sacred. It's sacred and very productive time. And the gifts I've gotten that have fueled me through reinventing myself with careers and brands come from the brain fog, which I still get. I don't get it because of my period. I am what some people would call a crone. I am past menopause, but there are still times when my brain is not working so well. And what I've learned is it's tired. It's tired. My brain is tired. My spirit's tired. My body's tired. I need time to refresh. Do I want to go take an ice bath, which is what the male experts suggest? No. Can you imagine taking an ice bath when your brain's foggy or maybe you are on your period? No. Hot shower, maybe. Heating pad, yes, for me. So now I understand why I wanted to be on the couch, why I wanted to be left alone, please, and why it was a way to recharge. And I should see it as a gift and not as shameful and as my being inadequate and a fraud and bad and wrong and all the things that we can think about ourselves, which can be geometrically magnified during that time of month when we don't really want to be out there. We don't really want to be out there leading the analytical pack. Doesn't mean that we can't. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't. It just means as we plan our time and organize our lives, if it is possible to jam in a little bit of time there for refreshing, that's great for being productive in your entire life. So let me just run through the stages, these 4 stages that I talked about, and give you a tiny bit of content around what's going on with your hormones. And then I'll go into each stage and why that is good news for you as a woman. So we start, as we started before, with your menstrual cycle. During that time, your estrogen drops and you may feel a little low, but we're going to talk about that. That's stage 1. And just think, oh, my estrogen levels are dropping during that stage. In the follicular stage, both estrogen and progesterone levels are rising. Like right after you're done with your period, those hormones are coming up and you're kind of getting in the groove. You are maybe not feeling more energy. On average, that's what's happening. And you'll let me know if that happens for you. But it's the beginning of chair dancing, or at least it was, when I was in that part of my life. In the ovulatory phase, estrogen and testosterone levels peak. All your hormones are pumping, baby. That's the, oh my God, I can do everything phase. Yes. And then you hit the luteal phase when your progesterone levels go down. So that's high level for each of the 4 phases. And now I'm going to talk about each one and why each one gives you a superpower, why it's great for you as a woman who has a cycle. In the menstrual phase of your cycle, that's a time when you feel like you don't want to be up and running around. Some of you may be more interior. I didn't have migraines. I didn't have horrible cramps. But I did always want a little time by myself. I felt more introverted during that time. And what I found was, and what still continues for me in the cycles I have as someone with chronic illnesses, when I am down, that's interior time, but that's also prime creative time. You're down, you're on the couch, your mind is free to wander. You're sort of in your head. That is, for me, and it may be for you, prime creative time. That's a good time if you're down to have your journal, to be recording your dreams, to be capturing what's going on inside yourself. If you think about that as prime time for creativity for you and for whomever you're either selling or giving your energy to, that kind of flips it, right? You're not a victim if you're having your period. You're having your period. You may be more creative than energetic. That's cool. We are in a new society where content creators, where creativity of all kinds are how you can get the highest return financially. We're talking money, honey. So that time on the couch, I feel like I, I am to be envied, because when I'm down, when I used to be down from my period, when I'm now down from health issues, that's great time to be working on my dreams, to be having my dreams. So the next stage of the hormonal cycle is ovulatory. And there was a woman writing in Forbes magazine, if you want, I can find the exact citation for you, who said, this is the phase when you are the great communicator. And that's because estrogen is up and also oxytocin is up. That's the chemical, the hormone you've all heard about, that is like the bonding chemical. You know, when we look at our babies, our oxytocin levels rise. When we look at our pets or anything we love, our oxytocin levels rise. And so the ability to connect emotionally with other people is at its highest during this phase. If you don't have control of your schedule, I get it. But to the extent that you do, this is the time to go out and make speeches. This is the time to do your Zoom calls. This is the time to ask for a raise. This is the time when your power to connect is supercharged. And so you can be out there and connecting with other people and investing that energy. Your ability to connect, that energy is going to have its highest returns. I'll give you an example from last night. We went to a concert and I saw a woman. She was just radiant, and she was wearing fuchsia sequined pants. Oh my God, they were fabulous. And I just pointed at her and I said, you. And she came up and she gave me a huge hug and said, you are my spirit woman. And then she just kept on going. And we sat down and Pop-Pops looked at me and said, what was that? And I said, my guess, she may be ovulating. And that prompted enough oxytocin in me that we bonded. In that moment, we were able to connect. That's a superpower, right? That's a superpower. And so I used to speak to large groups of women. I would speak to thousands of women at a time. And the ability to connect meant that they could talk to me in a real way about their lives. And I now realize I have inside of me all this information about real women, because in that phase, in that time of my cycle and theirs, we were able to connect and communicate very, very deeply. And that's different from a model that works really well for men, that I am impressed with and can do and honor and experience. The model where there is an expert and the expert has scientific evidence of what he or she is going to say. And so the expert speaks to you, you receive the information, and then you're supposed to do what they say, right? The expert viewer model, which is a lot of what people receive. But one step beyond that is the ability to connect that not only moves people, but it moves markets. That ability to connect, that is a superpower, especially during that part of the month, is able to move markets. And you see it in anyone who makes a ton of money. And we can talk about that later. The luteal phase is where you consolidate, and it's a great phase for grinding it out and for stamina. This is an important phase for women athletes. Some research suggests that we can withstand more pain during this part of our cycle, and we have more stamina. So the productivity efforts that are based on grind it out, grind it out, grind it out, grind it out. Gary Vee is excellent at giving us advice for the luteal phase of our cycle. That's when he makes the most sense for us, because he's into do it 46 times, and 5 of them will work. In the luteal phase, that makes a lot of sense. That's when you can grind it out. That's when you can hit that cardio. That's when you have a lot of stamina. That's when you really want to pump it up at the gym and in your work. If you want to put in long, grindy days and show a lot of effort, if somebody from your employer is tracking your computer, or they're paying attention to when you're in Zoom calls, when people are caring about face time and actual, what they consider work time, this is the part of your cycle where you say, yeah, dude, I'm really hitting it. And that is the obvious manifestation of productivity. In my mind, it is not the real productivity for you in your life. That's why I keep going back to how you invest your energy. And the way to do it in the luteal phase is grinding, grinding, grinding. One of the phrases I ran across that I really want to share with you, and I think is worth more thought and research, is the phrase body literacy. So there is so much that the world needs to learn about women's health, and there's so much we need to learn about ourselves. So we have apps now that help us keep track of our biometrics, and we can see how many steps we've run and how much sleep we've had. And what I'm reaching for you, and what I'm hoping you can reach for, is a deeper understanding of where you are right now in your life, and what gives you energy, what gives you different kinds of energy, what do you choose to do with that energy. I am totally convinced that that's the way your life can be maximized, where your life can be everything you want it to be if you start with yourself. If you don't start with the framework, if you don't start with other biometrics, if you start with noticing, here I am, and loving where you are. Part of loving yourself is loving that you're not the same on every day. Hallelujah. So today is just the beginning. And if you want to dive deeper, there are two things that I would ask of you. One is subscribe and ask your friends to subscribe. And please comment. That's sort of one thing. And the other is to help build a community where we can share, where we can openly share with each other. The information and the intelligence we need is found in ourselves, and it's also found in other women. We can talk to each other about our experience in a way that is more nuanced when we are talking to each other than when we are trying to fit in with guys. And so my hope is that this works for you, that you want to work with it, and that you want to be part of a community that helps women not just maximize our own power in the world, but helps create the world that we want for ourselves and for our children, because that's what this is all about. Please join me and tell me how this feels.